Hello, it's Cleverly Jones and welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to discuss part 2 of the Burger Chef murders. This documentary is currently airing on HBO Max. So Jim rushes up to the jail to get Alan's story. Alan stated that he had been drinking all day and he hadn't eaten. He wanted to go to Burger Chef, but he realized that it was already closed. So he decided to go over to Dunkin' Donuts, which was right next door to the Burger Chef. Once he got done eating, he stepped outside to have a cigarette. He said he saw a van pull up at the Burger Chef, and there were two guys that jumped out of the van that he recognized: Tim Willoughby and Jeff Reed. He saw Jeff go into the Burger Chef. He saw Jeff come out the back of the building with Mark, and he was holding Mark by the collar. Jeff shoved Mark into the van violently. Jeff also lowered Daniel and Ruth into the van. And here's a little bit of the audio from Alan giving his account of the details that happened that night.
I was the last person to see them victims alive that night at the Burger Chef. Me and my friend, we were both really intoxicated. I hadn't ate nothing all that day with a gut full of beer. Burger Chef looked like it was already closed. So we decided to go to Dunkin' Donuts, and the Dunkin' Donuts was right next to the Burger Chef. Came out to have a cigarette, and I saw the orange van. It was sitting right about here, the van. So I had a clear view shot of it. I saw two guys that I recognized, Tim Willoughby and Jeff Reed. I saw Jeff Reed go into the Burger Chef. I saw Jeff Reed come out the back of the building, holding Mark by the collar of the shirt, slammed him into the van. I heard the thump. Jeff Reed loaded Daniel Davis and rushed into the van. I saw Tim Willoughby and Jane Freed come out the back door, and they were arguing with each other. She said something like, "You mother." I never heard Jane ever cuss in her life. I thought, well, maybe Jane stepped on somebody's toes and pissed them off. They were out here, settling the score. I didn't know anybody was being adept. They took off. That was the last I saw of them. If I knew what the hell was going on that night, I would have walked over here and got involved. I probably would have got shot and killed, but I didn't give it.
So that's a little bit of Alan's account of what happened. The podcasters reported that Jeff had been known for fighting and was involved in drugs. Tim also sold drugs. Alan let it be known that he didn't care for Tim. We do know that Jane graduated from the same high school as Jeff and Tim. Jane was always known as a sweetheart. However, the podcasters spoke to some of Jane's high school friends who noted that she had got involved in selling drugs along with her older brother. Brian mentions that he always liked Jane as a manager, but however, she was known to disappear at night. So Jim goes up to the prison to interrogate Alan, and I have a little bit of that audio.
Vanished for a little bit throughout the night. I interrogated Alan Pruitt about the Burger Chef.
What did you think was going on? There was some talk going on about this situation that Jane found herself involved with Tim Willoughby. What was that over? Drugs. Jeff and Tim was letting Jane deal with them. Jane was running 2 ounces of coke, and she said, "I stole out a car ride." Every time she smelled her, she'd come up with something about was a shortage of money, or she was talking the money out of it. Tim was blaming about it. So anything you knew about any drug dealing was what Tim had told you, right?
The podcasters think that Alan was actually a credible witness because he had nothing to gain by going to the authorities and telling his story. He wasn't given any sort of reward and didn't ask for a reduced sentence. Strange fact is Alan also knew what happened the day after the murders. He said he didn't realize that the killings had occurred. Here's a little bit of his story.
Outside the Dairy Queen, Tim Willoughby and Jeff Reed pulled up in an orange van with a girl in the back, Mary Ann Hickabotham. She was Tim Willoughby's girlfriend. I asked Tim Willoughby, I said, what was the deal up at the Burger Chef? What kind of beef did you have with Jane? He kind of acted like I was his best friend. They wanted to know if I wanted to go out riding around, drink some beer, smoke a couple joints. I said, sure, why not? Jeff Jeff Reed was driving the van. Tim Willoughby was in the passenger seat. Mary Ann Hickabotham was in the back. I saw a nickel-plated .38 caliber revolver. Mary Ann seemed like she had been crying, and then she said, "Alan, I think they're going to kill me." And I'm like, "Do what?" She goes, "I think they're going to kill me." I didn't know what to do because I didn't know what was going on. Tim Willoughby was whispering something to Jeff Reed, and I thought, man, I'm feeling uneasy about this. Mary Ann yelled at Tim, "You need to quit doing this stupid. If you don't stop, I'm going to the cops." Tim Willoughby reached back behind the seat and smacked Mary Ann across the face, told her, "Shut up." I was scared to death. The van pulls up to the bridge, Devil's Backbone. Walk down the creek. Mary Ann turned to me and said, "Alan, run as fast as you can because I think they're going to kill you." I turned around and I bolted as fast as I could. As I was running, I heard a gunshot.
Alan heard that gunshot and thought they were trying to kill him. So the podcasters investigate Alan's story a little more. What they found out was in June of 1979, a boy found a sealed barrel in the creek. He reached into the barrel and found a skull. That skull turned out to be Mary Ann Higginbotham. She had been shot. Her remains were found 7 months after the Burger Chef murders. All of this fits in with Alan's story. Alan said he didn't come forward at the time because he was receiving threats. However, Alan's story has never been corroborated, and Mary Ann's death remains an open case. Jim states that he knows for a fact that Alan was there. However, the issue remains whether Alan was there as a witness or a suspect. Alan makes it known that he doesn't care for Jim and thinks Jim just wants to put the crimes on him. Alan says he took a polygraph and passed it, and Jim says he didn't pass. Alan also claims that the police wanted him to take some sort of truth serum, and Jim says that was a joke, that they never asked him to take any type of truth serum. Jim states he doesn't know whether or not to believe Alan. So the documentary gives us some additional details. There's actually no record of Tim or Jeff owning a van that matched Alan's description. And the police never found an orange van, period. However, Tim and Jeff were never brought in for official questioning. Tim was involved in a car theft ring, and so he went on the run when he got caught. So the cops were unable to find him and question him. However, Jeff Reed was still around. Jeff was in the Danville jail, and Jim found out that he was going to be released soon. Jim didn't want him to be released without speaking to him. He knew once he was released, basically he'd be gone and he wouldn't get the opportunity to speak with him. So Jim met him at the jail on his release date. He knew when Jeff got released that he wouldn't have any money and probably would be hungry. So Jim offered him breakfast and asked to talk to him. Jim says that he told Jeff that he thought he was involved in the incident. He said that Jeff ate his food and didn't say a word. He didn't deny it. He just sat there and said nothing and ate his food. Jim says they couldn't just go by Alan's word and arrest Jeff. His story needed to be corroborated, and Jim didn't think Alan was a credible witness. Plus, they didn't find any evidence. However, if you go back to part 1 of my review, there was no way they could actually really find evidence. The police didn't take this seriously initially, so the day after the murder took place, they let employees back into the restaurant to start the day shift, and the employees cleaned the whole restaurant, so there was no preservation of evidence. Since Alan's story didn't lead to an arrest, the police continued to search for suspects. So the documentary cuts back to Mark's story. There were a lot of rumors of Mark owning a drug dealer. However, his people pushed back against this narrative. The podcasters felt that there were some racial undertones to this because Mark was the only black victim. However, Jim continues to state that the biggest barrier for them was just the lack of evidence. There was nothing at the restaurant, and there were no shell casings in the woods where the bodies were found. The family members give up hope that this case will ever be solved. However, in 1989, someone confesses to the murders. His name was Donald Forrester, and he has a terrifying history. He had abducted a girl and assaulted her. He was convicted and sentenced to 95 years to life. Donald was interrogated by the police, and they found out he knew where the bodies were located and he knew how they were positioned. He knew Jane because she would visit a house near him to buy drugs. He claimed she owed $15,000 for drugs, and that is the reason why she was killed. He even told the investigators that he flushed the shell casings down the toilet. He had a septic tank, so the casings actually ended up in there. So the cops dug up the septic tank to find the shell casings, but the casings were for the wrong caliber of gun. His confession completely fell apart. He also made other statements about the way the victims were bound, and the victims weren't bound. So at this point, the cops knew he was telling a lie. All he was trying to do was get a lighter sentence by confessing to the murders. At this point, the case remains unresolved. The Burger Chef sales went down at that location after the incident. Eventually, that location closed and Burger Chef was sold to Hardee's. The whole Burger Chef chain was shut down in 1982. That brings me to the end of this recap. If you enjoyed this, please give a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. And if you've watched the documentary and have any thoughts, make sure to comment down below. I will see you for the next one.